MFA is still a number one issue, even just external applications, but internal applications as well.
A lot of people still aren't implementing MFA on everything.
You don't want to have users have administrative rights to the machine. There's really two tabletop exercises types that you want to do. One is the tactical, and then the other is strategic. Yeah, from an AI perspective, I've already had IR breaches in AI. So I had a situation where one customer asked Copilot if they're having a layoff. And it freaking told them.
You're listening to the Ransomware Rewind, where we break down the latest cyber threats, data breaches, and security solutions that matter to you and your business. Stay secure. Stay informed. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Ransomware Rewind podcast. I'm happy to introduce our guest. Joshua Nicholson is the founder and CEO of DarkStack7, a Charlotte, North Carolina-based cybersecurity firm, a former U.S. Marine Corps sergeant. He brings 24 years of hands-on keyboard security experience and senior leadership roles from Booz Allen Hamilton, Cofense, Wells Fargo, Ernst & Young, along with board seats on OnDefend and CVET's business. And he holds a CISM, and multiple other certifications, including a GIAC certification. Do we call that GIAC? Is that what it's called?
Kind of the term.
And hosts his own show. Make sure to give him a sub to Cybersecurity America. Welcome to the show, Joshua.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, when you're out there in the field, what are the top 5 mistakes people are making when it comes to incident response?
That's a good question because it can be in a couple different areas from a people, process, technology perspective. I think the first one is not even having an incident response team, not having someone responsible when things occur. That's always critical. Who has the power to make a decision in an incident? That seems to be like the number one thing that happens. Hey, we need to take this segment down, or we need to do this. But who's got the authority to do that? And when are we going to do that type thing? And so you can see where that's really important to understand from just from an administration perspective, who has to make these business decisions. We always understand who makes the technical decisions, but sometimes the business decisions aren't as clear. So I think that's the number one, is just who's in charge and who does what. Now, the second one is we notice MFA is still a number one issue, even just external applications, but internal applications as well. It's not having multi-factor authentication turned on, even though that is critical and it's best practices for most things. It's really crucial that you have your patching of firewalls and maintenance of infrastructure. I've seen firewalls like Fortinet get popped constantly, and it seems to be a real easy target for attackers to use. See where there's a lot of just hygiene stuff. They never had a security review, didn't know this was exposed to the internet. That seems to be the basic blocking and tackling. But a number of things is not having an incident response retainer, not having someone who's trained and onboarded in the first place. And you're going to waste the first hour just understanding how's the network set up and how's the architecture and how applications work. So when I come into an incident blind like that, it's really difficult to bring value quickly. You spend a lot of time just trying to figure out what is the issue. And then I see in corporate America that a lot of them move more to IR retainers. So you would have a contract with someone like myself, and we already have credentials, and they're shut down, and they're break glass accounts. And so when you need that, the access doesn't try to get permissioned in the middle of a disaster. That seems to always be a problem. We're trying to get access to a system or log on, and we can't because different systems are online because of the attack. So it's always good to prepare and be there ahead of time for that. And then the last one I think is backups, not having right backups. It's the one that kind of fits into the IT category instead of the cybersecurity. But in the corporate world, we don't have time to do forensics on every machine. We have time to determine what it is, image it, get it back into production, and move on. So you have to be able to have your backup, your recovery. That's what prevents these massive payouts on ransomware or anything like that. So immutable backups are one of probably the last 5. I don't know, Joe, does that make sense?
Yeah, that could have been 6 or 7, but we really broke them down. But I like what you said about MFA. A lot of people still aren't implementing MFA on everything. And during my day job as a cyber insurance broker, we have people clicking yes that they have MFA on all systems when they may not have it on all systems. They may have it on their email and their customer relationship management and some of their core, software, but they may not have it on everything, and they may be inadvertently, lying on their cyber insurance application, and they need someone like you or a professional that can look at their system and say, hey, we don't have MFA here, we don't have it here, and check them all off, because the attacker only needs one spot to get in. They don't need, for people don't understand, like when we're playing defense, like we can do everything we can, but when they're playing offense, they only need to get in once and one spot, and then we have failed.
Right.
So, I mean, is that what you're seeing out there? Like, hackers are creative, right? Or they're at least, or they're attacking the low hanging fruit. What do you see out there?
They're not, well, a lot of it's not very creative. It's just user compromises and being able to, it's the new perimeter is the user account itself, because you can log on to this Azure client, this AWS, and you can get the password reset to your mailbox. And so the perimeter really has gone around that. It used to be in cyber, we carried about the firewall, what's the host behind the firewall, and it was all infrastructure, communication restriction type communications and control, cybersecurity controls. But now it really has to be behavior analytics. It has to be permissions across multiple platforms, your ability to SSO and disable accounts across multiple platforms. Like if you have employees that leave, but it takes forever to find all the accounts they had access to because all of them are distributed. They don't have user name and password managed centrally. It's kind of in apps and all over the place. I just got finished an incident just now, and all the machines have the same admin password. So what happens is one machine gets compromised. They use that credential and that authentication token just to move laterally. So they have access to the entire network when you do that. But if you use something like LAPS, which is local area password synchronization tool for Microsoft Azure, well, it keeps up and changes the local admin password on each of those desktops. So if one did get hit, they couldn't move laterally as easy as most ransomware actors do. They just have the same password. They can move to 50 to 100 machines and hit them all. But if it was a different password, it would stop at each one. It would prevent it from moving laterally. So, but you can see that those don't come on by default. You have to actually configure that, design it, implement it, and it has great impacts to the security of your organization. But it normally doesn't get implemented until after there's been a breach and we're doing remediation.
Wow. And when you say admin password on each laptop, are those laptops given admin permissions, or are they logged in as an admin, or are because I know some people, they don't understand the difference between admin access and actually the employee having a profile that's set up as an admin for that laptop.
Yeah, so there's two ways around it. Generally, you don't want to have users have administrative rights to the machine. If they click on malware or a phishing link, it will execute in their context. And having admin rights gives you access to system level binaries and everything. So it's bad. You don't want to use that. However, you have the ability to use UAC and step up authenticate to use an admin credential when you need to install software or do something like that. So there's a best practice to use that. And the admin passwords here that we're talking about used to be you had to have it for applications to work. You had to have full access to the operating system and so forth. That's the easiest way to give someone access because nothing's going to stop them. Well, in this world, that's why we can't do that anymore. We have to be able to remove users' access, privileged access from the machine, provide them access to see it, but don't give them administrative rights, and then have them put in a ticket when software either needs to be updated, or at least let them step up authenticate where I need to come up and put an admin credential to do something like that. A lot of organizations don't like the headache and the problems that it causes. Somebody's got it's a different way of doing something, or it stops somebody from doing something. And then management just says, hey, it's okay, let them do it, we trust them. It has nothing to do with the trust of the person. It has to do with the trust of what their credential would do if someone else got a hold of it. So,
yeah, I've heard of people making exceptions for the board of directors or the CEO or the CFO, where, he can't be troubled to have multi-factor authentication. It's just too
Yeah.
much trouble for him he's not a tech guy. Can you just turn it off for him? And then, of course, how did the hacker get in? Through his laptop, because it didn't have the multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, and that is definitely one of the pieces. There's things you can do to minimize that, like go passwordless, where you're using those password hashes and stuff like that. So you can use it with a vault technology, so you don't have as many of the password change problems, and so forth. So there's authentication schemes that can help people like this, because when you go password resistant password keys, you don't have to change it all the time, and it allows you to log on. So just a secure way of doing it. But it does take some configuration and working with your user community, and how do you go about using this, and so forth. But you're absolutely right. The human need to do their job and move obstacles out of their way. And sometimes security is considered an obstacle for that person. And yes, they become the weakest link and I had this in banking 15 years ago. The COO didn't want to change his password. So everybody in the bank had to adhere to the password standard that went to the OCC and the regulators. We told them this was our standard, but we had one exception, and it was the CEO. Now, the way we got him off of that exception list and cleared the audit is we told him we would tell the auditors that he's the only one that is not adhering to the policy for cybersecurity that
Nice.
we put out there, just to let you know. I was like, oh, I don't want that. I don't want my name out there for the guy that's not doing it appropriate. So, okay. I'll go
shaming people into good cybersecurity practices is fine. I think it's a good use of shaming people. Get them to be safer.
Yeah, it all depends on it. I try not to fear them into anything, because I had an incident with a customer about a month ago, and they had a vulnerability in the SaaS application that they use for backups and everything. And the vendor told them, here's this vulnerability, you need to patch it. This is a big environment. They service Fortune 500s. And they wanted to know my opinion, should they implement this change and then push it out to all these Linux machines quickly before any kind of security incident happens. And then bottom line, it looked and analyzed the security controls there, and I advised them to stop and not push it out, and only push it out to maybe 1% of the population and wait 2 weeks. And what happened is that there is a stability problem with the patch that they wrote, and it was crashing systems. And if you would have gone by the fear and doom of the IT department, they would have pushed that patch out to 1,000 Linux machines. Then we would have had a disaster on our hand, because you couldn't revert it, you couldn't go back. So there's two worlds of incident response.
It'd be like a mini CrowdStrike incident.
Yeah, or like SolarWinds or something like that. You go to patch of SolarWinds or something. Like CrowdStrike, they had a patch on a Windows operating system, and CrowdStrike thought it was a virus and then shut down all these Windows machines. So I remember when that occurred. But so that's always important to understand what your impact is to production and what is the risk of that security vulnerability. And so the two sides are, there's an incident, I get called in, I got to figure out what's happening, or there's a big security risk that someone is exploiting in the wild, and they need to understand what should they do about it before it turns into a risk. So one's a IR and one they call a C risk, which is like computer incident response for that. You would do an emergency patch. Well, that is now blending. Incident response guys are now in disaster recovery meetings. We're now in remediation meetings. Why? Because the fear of the vulnerability, the fear to cover yourself and get something out fast, has been taking major networks and Fortune 500s out. So you need to be a little more judicious when you do these patches, and do it in a consolidated test environment. But a lot of times that's what I'm seeing in the bigger environments. It's really easy to blow your stuff up.
Right. And, I know patching and that it's not like the sexiest thing in cybersecurity, but it's one of the more important things, the blocking and tackling, the fundamentals. You gotta talk patching.
Especially
you were talking about,
especially things that are not on the Windows update, like your Fortinet firewall. You know how many times people are not patching the Fortinet firewall or the Cisco routers or any of those devices? Just the Windows machines that have automatic update. Well, that's really rudimentary. You need to look at all of it. So.
Right. And I would, cybersecurity people would probably argue that you shouldn't put your Windows stuff on automatic update, and you might want to test that before you implement it in all the machines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though it's from Windows.
Yeah. So there is the ability that if you can have a denial of service incident and make it even worse than it is by pushing that patch out too soon. So what's always what you want to do is look at it from an incident response perspective. Is this vulnerability allow system level access? Is it just informational? What is the CVSS score for it? And then the next question you ask yourself is it's and so forth. So I think that's always important.
So a lot of cybersecurity experts, they're looking for the outside threat and the hacker or the person in the hoodie. But when it comes to crisis management and incident response, natural disasters can cause just as much havoc on a business as a widespread hacking event or a CrowdStrike event. Have you had a situation like that, like a Hurricane Katrina or a California fire? And can you describe what happened and how you guys managed that crisis?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, Hurricane Katrina, like you were saying, that was a big one for me. So I was a network engineer. I kind of lost my house, I lost my job, and I lost my bank all at the same time because my bank was 2 credit unions underwater. And I had a family and 2 kids. So if you want to talk about disaster recovery, that was really it. Even my support team, my family is locally, and my mom and all them, and they're evacuated. So you're talking about even your support team had to go with you. So we learned a lot from it, and it wasn't just be prepared for these major disasters of once every 100-year storm, but there was an instance where we had generators running for most of the systems that we had there. The bank that I was working with, and there was another bank we were partnering with. One had a brand new generator, state of the art, and it ran for about 48 hours until we found out there is no fuel contract to come in and bring fuel to that generator. The other bank had an older generator, but they had a fuel contract. So what happens in a disaster is the fuel guys with the big trucks for the diesel that needed for the diesel is needed for the generators. They only deliver to people they have contracts in the middle of a disaster. They cut. There is no new employees. You can't get a new shipment. So if you didn't
This
have
is like insurance for a disaster with the gas company, basically.
Yeah. So what's the point of having a generator if you ran out of fuel in 48 hours? It doesn't work. And we had to shut all the systems down because of that. Nobody thought you'd have to run on generator for longer than 48 hours. And that was a major planning problem. But you can see it wasn't just a technology. It wasn't the IT department says, hey, let's not have bigger generators here. It was just a failure of leadership to account for that and from a business continuity. I also had a time where I'm doing incident for a big pharmaceutical, and the incident response desktops that they gave us were virtual Amazon AWS workstations. And that whole region got wiped out. There was a disaster happening. So in the middle of an incident, we couldn't actually provide service because the desktops they gave us were virtual and they were offline in that Amazon environment. So during an incident,
So
we
the
couldn't get
disaster that
firewall.
they had, it was a disaster that had to do with the disaster of the laptops. I mean, you couldn't do it because the disaster that you were trying to remediate, the tools you had were already part of the disaster.
Yeah, they were part of the disaster, and it was the first time I had briefed the CISO on a number of different threats from a threat intelligence perspective. We get briefings every day. My job was to ensure she knew what was going on. And one time we had walked through some intel, and I said, it looks like ransomware actors, they are targeting people with denial of service when they do not pay the ransom. This is their way of getting back and making you pay for it, and they also report you to the regulators that, hey, we've had this breach, and they never notified anybody. So they get really nasty kind of on that, and they want to make sure that that's out there. But you can see where they're going to pressure you in multiple different ways to try and pay that ransom, whether you're going to do it kind of or not. And in this case, they had one of them I was watching. They had a ransomware actor where they had ransomware the environment. They had the data. They were leaking out small bits of it in order to be able to ransom someone and to kind of hold that hostage. And what you notice here is if you had really strong disaster recovery capabilities and really good immutable backups, you don't have to go through that whole negotiation. You do to kind of pull information out of them, intelligence out of them to figure out what do they really have. But you can get back to a normal state really quick and fast. And in an incident, your disaster recovery really helps. So in this case, she asked what would happen. I asked her, do you have a denial of service control? What happens if there is a massive denial of service here and there's a flood of network traffic? I said, I don't know. Let me go find out. She went and talked to her executives and her deputies, and come to find out, we had our next meeting the next month, is that had got cut from budgeting, and they had the equipment in place, but they never paid for the service. It's not in production and so forth. Okay. Well, we found out we get hit 3 days later with an 88 gig denial of service in the middle of this. And the scrubbers were in place, but they were never turned on and tested. So the whole Fortune 500 network here is down because of it.
Wow.
But the fact that the scrubbers were in place and she had pushed the project forward anyway because of the discussion we had in Intel, she was able to get that system up and running in about 4 hours and take that denial of service traffic and manage it. Where if she wouldn't have had that conversation a month ahead of time and wouldn't have investigated where were we with the solution and where's the hardware and so forth, we would not have been prepared. We would have been down for about 4 days to maybe 4 weeks. But the fact that they were able to see those risks from what the threat actor are doing, I mean, that's the panacea. That's what we all want. These guys are doing this. We need to do this and be careful so we don't get hit. So,
absolutely.
That makes sense. That was one of my favorite stories, you know.
Yeah, and you're seeing that on every single insurance application that we see for cyber insurance is, do you have an incident response plan? And now they're not just asking, do you have it? They're asking, is it tested? Yeah. So it's so important not to just have something that's on the shelf. It's got to be something that, you practice, quarterly, monthly, and in some form. And you do those exercises that I think your company offers, right? Tabletop exercises.
Yeah. So you do tabletop exercises, and there's really 2 tabletop exercises types that you want to do. One is the tactical, and then the other is strategic. I've been in incidents where you have the executive leadership team and the engineers on the same call, and that's always a disaster. The engineers don't talk because there's executives on the phone. The executives feel that they're leadership, so they must say something, and then it just becomes a disaster. So you want to do, the first thing is you test this out in your tabletops, but you want to bifurcate the team. You want to say, okay, technical team, start to gather this information. Let's get on a call. I'll set up a bridge here. We'll get reconnected in about 30 minutes. Executive team, what I need from you is to start pulling your BCP plans, start talking to you're looking at your insurance provider, go talk to your regulators if you need to. We will not have a preliminary report from you for at least 2 hours. So please don't hound the incident response team and ask them a bunch of questions and did you fix it yet and blah, blah, blah. I realize you're an executive and your job is to analyze risk and pass it up for decisioning. However, we don't have a clear enough picture, so let's take the pressure off the IR team. We'll come back to you in 2 hours. That is extremely important to do that, because if not, it becomes a mess internally and you're trying to manage personalities and so forth. So having the tabletop exercises, but having them separated, do the tactical one first where we walk through, okay, we just had a ransomware attack. What would you do first? Where'd you run books? Where are your logs at? How would you handle this from an IR perspective? Then later on, we do the strategic tabletop like 3 months later and give them a scenario and walk through. And it's more of the business risk. Okay, I've had 5,000 records out. What do I need to do? Who do I need to be calling? What's important to the company? The IR team shouldn't be worrying about that. They don't need to care at the time. What is the business going to do to announce this breach? That's what leadership and executive management should worry about. And there needs to generally be someone in the middle. And what I do as an incident commander, I sit between the executive and the tactical teams, and I give advice on both sides in order to have a positive outcome after the incident. So as positive as you can have it.
Yeah. I mean, and the more you prepare, like you said, the the better the outcome's going to be and the less costly it's going to be. I think I
Yeah.
saw
And
a statistic that was like people with practice incident response programs, the insurance claim is about 84% less than those without.
yeah,
Would you say that's your experience, that people with or without, like you're looking at widely different outcomes, those that have prepared and those haven't?
yeah, there's other factors, obviously, but yeah, the preparation is key, right? The same thing with the technology decisions that people make. I've been in these big companies where some executive decided we're going to have this merger and we're going to keep all this old crap and we're going to combine it with all the other old crap we have, and then somehow can you secure all this old crap? Well, it doesn't work. Right? It causes us massive problems. So instead of us worrying about threat actors, we now have an attack surface that has holes all over it. And so that's a terrible environment to put cybersecurity people into. And so it's much better to have a hygiened approach towards that, of where's from a patching and lockdown perspective, of a prevent perspective, but just from a detection perspective, where's your logs at? Azure only keeps 30 days worth of logs by default. Well, this thing happens 40 days out. How can I see what happened? You can't. You don't have the right licensing. I've had more incidents where you can't get to a conclusion because they didn't have licensing on that it generated the log in the first place. So if, for instance, message to message logging, if your email box in Exchange and you're sending an email to me, your account was compromised and you're sending an email to me, and we're both internal, that won't be recorded. I'm not going to see it. It'll be in your sent logs, but the server itself is not going to be able to see that. And the reason is because you don't, that logging is premium. You have to turn that on to be able to see that. So it makes phishing attacks harder. Once an account's compromised, they used it internally to spread and do some things. I can't really see that because it didn't record the activity in the log because I didn't pay for the premium license. Does that make sense? You have licensing that causes cybersecurity issues all the time. And the way they make more money is they say, okay, do you want more verbose logging? You want to record more stuff? Here's the premium, and it takes more storage, so we're going to charge you for it. And people don't know it until it's too late.
Right. Yeah. It may have been just a few more dollars a month, or in some cases it could have been free. You just have to change the configurations. You just don't know what you don't know unless you work with a professional like you, Joshua. So getting to that, how can people find you, Joshua? What can they hire you for? And to close out, I always ask this. Let's do that first. How do people find you?
So you can find me on my website in www.darkstack7.com. I always have my LinkedIn profile as well. And I also host a Cybersecurity America podcast. So you can always catch me there on YouTube and Spotify and everything. But yeah, there's always a contact me form on the site. If you need cybersecurity assistance, maybe it's an intrusion, maybe you need something locked down and hardened, maybe you need some security audits or whatever that may be. Just reaching out to me and sending me an email at info@darkstack7.com, and we'll definitely help you out. I get that free 30-minute consultation where, whether you're going to use us or not, or whether it's something you can do something about or not, we're able to get on that phone and at least help vet that and do that for free, so you don't have to worry. So.
Awesome. Yeah, we want to have a podcast in cybersecurity if we didn't talk about AI, right? So
Yeah.
Where do you think AI is going? We're going to get Star Trek or Skynet?
Yeah, probably some combination of both of them. Yeah, from an AI perspective, I've already had IR breaches in AI. So I had a situation where one customer asked Copilot if they're having a layoff, and it freaking told them. And he asked who was getting laid off, and it supplied the spreadsheet because the HR department was using the same data enclaves and the same OneDrives, separated from permissions, but the agent had access to both. The Copilot agent has access to both those data. So when somebody asked, it wasn't smart enough to say, oh, you're not from the HR department, you're not from CEO. Give this employee message. Instead, it's just super helpful. It said, yeah, here's all the people and here's their salaries. Started a massive breach and lawsuits, and it was just really interesting how that's going to be our future. It's easier to social engineer an agent than it is to social engineer a human. It's harder to social engineer a human than it is an agent, because an agent is purposely designed to be helpful. And you can say it in different ways. Like, for instance, how do you get around, how you get around it writing malware or doing something it's not supposed to? Well, if you tell it to do something like, I want you to write this at malware, I want you to do this, it has those community rules and it says, nah, we can't do that. I'm not going to do that. That's not within our programming, or whatever its statement is. But you could also ask the model, says, well, if you were going to violate your processes and procedures, and we would want to write a detection control to find that, how would you go about doing it and for me to do this? And then it kind of tells on itself and gives you the entire way how, through the language, lexiconically, how do I get around security using the language, the English language for it. So I think that is really critical. I think the biggest thing nobody talks about is what happens when these critical systems and applications are AI decisioned and then they go offline and have massive corruption or some outline. Now you got it where people can't even make the decisions fast enough for that app to happen, or somebody doesn't even know the mental processes to create it in the first place. We've kind of like given it to the AI to do it, and how do we recreate it if it goes offline? So
yeah, I was reading about this today. I can't remember if it's OpenAI or one of the other big ones like Anthropic, but they were saying like the AI had a breach and they had to use an older version of the AI that they could still control to like talk to the new AI. So it's really interesting, like how this thing is going. And I was like, this is like Terminator 2, like when we had to get the old type of Terminator to fight the new Terminator.
Yeah. You heard of Mythos, huh? The model Mythos from Anthropic. I mean, it like found security vulnerabilities in classified systems. I mean, went after it and was able to hack into all these classified systems. So that's why they took it offline. You can't have the model anymore. But what gets concerning, just look at it from a government perspective. The administration here just put in a rule, or they're trying to do, I don't know if it's finalized, it says before you develop this new cutting edge AI model that the government has to see it and verify it beforehand. Well, that's an interesting
so we can
wrinkle.
copy it, basically.
Well, that, or that the model could be so dangerous to national security. Like Mythos apparently was able to compromise several classified systems really quick and fast, and with vulnerabilities that they never knew about before. So that's kind of scary that it's able to do that at that speed.
Or it's like a pre-quantum, decryption of data and cybersecurity.
But there is going to be, this is just my opinion, I see this in the future, you're going to have an AI crash. And the reason why you're going to have an AI crash is people are spending billions on this right now in many different countries. China is about to come out with very cheap LLM models and SSM models, and they're going to flood the market with these cheap models. And then these big expensive Anthropic and A1s are going to take a massive hit. They're going to undercut the market with cheap AI, and they're going to flood.
Yeah.
And that's why I
say this is a good enough model for
like the Toyota model. Get a Toyota that'll
you can host this at home, or you could pay a subscription, for this expensive model that pretty much does the same thing for everything that you're going to need. Yeah, the Toyota versus the Ford. Yeah, I see that. Cool, Joshua. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. Everyone that's listening, thank you for getting this far and listening to the Ransomware Rewind podcast. Please share it with your friends. Give it a like, subscribe, leave a comment. We answer all our comments. We usually only get one or two, but we answer them all, right? So I appreciate y'all listening, and thanks for coming on the show.